Hello! Today I'm going to read you Tootles, the train. Has the same name I do, Tootles. This story is by Gertrude Crampton, and the pictures are by Timor Gergely. Gergely, I think. Sorry about that. Far, far to the west of everywhere is the village of Lower Trainswich. All the baby locomotives go there to learn to be a big locomotive. The young locomotives steam up and down the tracks trying to call out the long, sad toot, toot of the big locomotives, but the best they can do is say a little toodle. Lower Trainswich has a fine school for engines. There are lessons in whistle blowing, stopping for a red flag, puffing loudly when starting, coming around curves safely, screeching when stopping, clicking and clacking over the rails. Ooh, there's Tootles. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. Of all the things that they are taught in the Lower Trainswich School for Locomotives, the most important, of course, is staying on the rails, no matter what. So that's the most important rule. Stay on the rails. See how they're all there in class, just like going to school. They got train school. Stay on the tracks. The head of the school is an old engineer named Bill. Bill always tells the new locomotives that he will not be angry if they sometimes spill the soup pulling the diner car, or if they turn the milk to butter now and then. But they will never be good trains unless they get 100, an A+ in staying on the rails, no matter what. All the baby engines work very hard to get 100% in staying on the rails. After a few weeks, not one of the engines in Lower Trainswich School for Trains would even think of getting off the rails, no matter what. So, nice little big picture of a train there. The Flyer from New York to Chicago. One day a new locomotive named Tootle came to school. Here is the finest baby I've seen in old 600, thought Bill. He patted the gleaming young locomotive and said, "How would you like to grow up to be the Flyer between New York and Chicago?" "If a Flyer goes very fast, I should like to be one," Tootle answered. "I love to go fast. Watch me." So there's Tootles, and there's the Flyer that goes from New York to Chicago. He raced all around the roundhouse. "Good, good," said Bill. "You must study whistle blowing, puffing loudly when starting, stopping for a red flag waving, and pulling the diner without spilling the soup." So he was going around the outside track of the roundhouse, and Bill is telling him he has to take all those classes. "But most of all, you must study staying on the rails no matter what. Remember, you can't become a Flyer unless you get 100, an A+ in staying on the rails." Tootle promised that he would remember and that he would work very hard. And he did too. He even worked hard at stopping for a red flag waving. Tootle did not like those lessons at all. There's nothing a locomotive hates more than stopping. See how he's coming to a halt with the red flag waving? But Bill said that no locomotive ever kept going when he saw a red flag waving. One day, while Tootle was practicing for his lessons and staying on the rails no matter what, a dreadful thing happened. He looked across the meadow he was running through, and he saw a fine, strong black horse. "Race you to the river," shouted the black horse, and kicked up his heels. Away went the horse. His black tail streamed out behind him, and his mane tossed into the wind. Oh, how he could run! "Here I go," said Tootle to himself. "If I'm going to be a Flyer, I can't let a horse beat me." He puffed. "Everyone at school will laugh at me." His wheels turned so fast that they were silver streaks. The cars lurched and bumped together, and just as Tootle was sure he could win, the tracks made a great curve. So there's Tootles running away on the tracks, going real fast. "Oh, whistle!" cried Tootle. "That horse will beat me now. He'll run straight while I take the great curve." Then the dreadful thing happened. After all that Bill had said about staying on the track no matter what, Tootle jumped off the tracks and raced along the black horse. I didn't know they could do that. The race ended in a tie. Both Tootle and the black horse were happy. They stood on the bank of the river and talked. "It's nice here in the meadow," Tootles said. When Tootles got back to school, he said nothing about leaving the rails. But he thought about it that night in the roundhouse. See, there's the horse, and there's Tootle racing right behind him. "Tomorrow I will work hard," decided Tootle. "I will not ever think of leaving the rails, no matter what." And he did work hard. He practiced tootling so much that the mayor himself ran up the hill, his green coattails flapping, and said that everyone in the village had a headache and would he please stop tootling. So Tootle was sent to practice staying on the rails no matter what. He's zipping along pretty fast there. As he came to the great curve, Tootle looked across the meadow. It was full of buttercups. "It's like a big yellow carpet. How I should like to play in them and hold one under my searchlight to see if I like buttercups. But no, I'm going to be a flyer, and I must practice staying on the rails no matter what." So Tootle clicked and clacked around the great curve. His wheels began to say over and over again, "Do you like butter? Do you?" "I don't know," said Tootle crossly, "but I'm going to find out." He stopped much faster than any good flyer ever does. Unless he is stopping for a red flag waving, he hopped off the tracks and bumped along the meadow to see the yellow buttercups. "What fun!" cried Tootle. And he danced around and around and held one of the buttercups under his searchlight. "I do like butter," cried Tootle. "I do." At last the sun began to go down. It was time to hurry back to the roundhouse. So Tootle had to go back to the roundhouse. That evening, while the chief oiler was playing checkers with old Bill, he said, "It's queer. It's very queer. But I found grass between Tootle's front wheels today." Said Bill. "There must be grass growing on our tracks." "Not on our tracks," said day watchman, who spent his days watching the tracks and his nights watching Bill and the chief oiler play checkers. Bill's face was stern. Tootles knows he must get 100, an A+, in staying on the rails no matter what, if he's going to be a flyer. See, there the guys are all playing checkers, and they're talking about seeing the grass under Tootles' wheels. I don't know what's going to happen next. Next day, Tootle played all day in the meadow. Doesn't sound like he's on the track, does it? He watched a green frog, and he made a daisy chain. He found a rain barrel, and he said softly, "Toot, toot." Shouted the barrel. "Why, I sound like a flyer already," cried Tootles. That night, the first assistant oiler said he had found a daisy in Tootles' bell. The day after that, the second assistant oiler said that he found hollyhock flowers floating in Tootles' 8 bowls of soup. See how he's playing off the tracks? He's not on the tracks at all. He's out in the field. Trains aren't supposed to be out in the field. Uh-oh, he's going to be in trouble. And then the mayor himself said that he had seen Tootle chasing butterflies in the meadow. The mayor himself said that Tootle had looked very silly, too. Early one morning, Bill had a long talk with the mayor himself. When the mayor himself left the lower Transwich School for Locomotives, he laughed all the way to the village. "Bill's plan will surely put Tootle back on track," he chuckled. So there's the mayor, and he saw that Tootles was playing out in the meadow. Bill ran from one store to the next, buying 10 yards of this and 20 yards of that, and all you have of the other. The chief oiler and the first, second, and third assistant oilers were hammering, sawing instead of oiling and polishing. And Tootle? Well, Tootle was in the meadow watching the butterflies flying and wishing he could dip and soar as they did. See how he's looking at the butterflies? He wants to be able to dip and soar just like they did. Not a store in Lower Transwich was open the next day, and not a person was at home. By the time the sun came up, every villager was hiding in the meadow along the tracks, and each of them had a red flag. It had taken all the red goods in Lower Transwich and hard work by the oilers, but there was a red flag for everyone. See how everyone is in town? And they all now have red flags. Soon Tootle came tootling happily down the tracks. When he came to the meadow, he hopped off the tracks, rolled along the grass. Just as he was thinking what a beautiful day it was, a red flag poked up from the grass and waved hard. Tootle stopped, for every locomotive knows he must stop for a red flag waving. "I'll go another way," said Tootle. So there he is. He's going to hop off the tracks there. He turned to the left, and up came another waving red flag, this time from the middle of the buttercups. When he went to the right, there was another red flag waving. There were red flags waving from the buttercups, the daisies under the trees near the bird's nest, and even one behind the rain barrel. And of course, Tootle had to stop for each one, for a locomotive must always stop for a red flag waving. "Red flags," muttered Tootle. "This meadow is full of red flags. How can I have any fun?" And look at Tootle. He has little tears coming down his eyes. And everyone else has their red flags, so everywhere he turns, he had to stop. Stop, stop, stop. "Whenever I start, I have to stop. Why did I think this meadow was such a fine place? Why don't I ever see a green flag?" Just as the tears were ready to slide out of his boiler, Tootle happened to look back over his coal car. On the track stood Bill, and in his hand was a big green flag. "Ooh," said Tootle. He puffed up to Bill and stopped. "This is the place for me," said Tootle. "There's nothing but red flags for locomotives that get off their tracks." "Hooray!" shouted the people of Lower Transwich, and jumped up from their hiding places. "Hooray for Tootle the Flyer!" So there they're all cheering the Tootle on, back onto the tracks. Now Tootle was famous. 2 miles a minute flyer. The young locomotives listened to his advice. Work hard, he tells them. Always remember to stop for a red flag waving, but most of all, stay on the rails no matter what. So Tootles is a 2-minute flyer. Woohoo! 2 miles a minute flyer, sorry. 2 miles a minute flyer. Well, I hope you like the story of Tootles learning how to be an engine there. Take care. Bye-bye.